So welcome to this part of the festival. Thank you so much for listening in today. I set up Compare Your Footprints about 3 or 4 years ago now. And to give you a bit of background on who I am, I have been helping organizations become sustainable and, more importantly, more pertinently, environmental for coming up to 20 years now, working in and out of the construction industry along that journey, helping different organizations reduce their environmental impacts, be it the logistics surrounding construction, what sort of materials that can be used, and or how construction is actually orchestrated through different sites, i.e. What's the process that you get, say, marble coming from Italy and then coming to a site in central London? How can we make sure that there's as least amount of offcuts as possible with regards to that marble, as an example? And so over that time period and over that journey, I realized that there's a real need for understanding that carbon footprint. And I was really, really keen not to have consultants being used for what I deem, and I think what we deem in the team, as fairly mundane and fairly easy tasks like carbon footprinting. Consultants can be used for the actual reductions of the footprints, but we think that if we can make it as easy as possible to carbon footprint, then we've been doing a good job. So what is a carbon footprint? We measure the greenhouse gases of the emissions of activities in an organization, such as a construction company, in terms of carbon dioxide equivalents, or commonly known as CO2e. This means that all the greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, can be expressed in a common unit, making it easier to understand and thus compare that footprint, which is, in our opinion, almost as important as understanding your footprint. The reason being is, what is it that your contemporaries and your competitors are doing? And if we're continually trying to reduce compared to our industry and compared to our competitors, then surely that is a good thing. So 10% of the UK's carbon dioxide emissions are associated with the manufacture and transport of construction materials and the construction process. We took that from Constructing Excellence. And in recent years, the construction industry has been working hard to reduce its negative environmental impact. And the fact that I'm here today is, well, that says it all, really, doesn't it? And I was lucky enough to listen to the tail end of the previous speakers. And I think that we all working together to try and reduce that environmental impact is incredibly important and a great journey to be on. So what helps to reduce carbon from construction? There are so many different ways that we can reduce the environmental impact within the construction industry. I mean, to go use an example, there's an awful lot of diesel generators being used on site, and how is it that we can stop that being used? Maybe going for electrical generators, Green D plus, which actually a client of ours, J Coffee, is trialing, and you'll hear more from them in a few slides time. And they're doing an awful lot to try and reduce the environmental impact on construction sites. And I think that going back to the carbon footprint and understanding that whole footprint, one of the thought processes that we have that will help organizations reduce that footprint as I said before, making it easier. But if you're a site manager on a construction site, then the chances are you went into that job to make sure that the site you are on in that particular job is the best run possible. You know, you're juggling waste coming out of the site, waste being recycled. You're making sure that different contractors and different subbies are running their part of the project as well as possible. You are ensuring that elements of the site are run as smoothly as possible, and you have that project timeline to keep to and adhere to. And because of that, it's an incredibly complicated job. And to add onto that, you are having to report on the carbon emissions and make sure those carbon emissions are being reduced and being reported on, either with you as the main contractor in order to be able to fulfill your project role, or as a subby to be reporting to the main contractor. And this is the reason why we brought in the construction element of Compare Your Footprint, was to be able to help the site managers to understand that footprint. And you can now do it automatically. And I'll go into more details of that at a later stage. But this all helps to reduce that carbon from construction, because what you don't measure, you don't reduce. So recycled materials are really interesting because they tend to have embodied emissions, and those are the emissions generated during the manufacture of the building materials, building products and materials used in construction. This is separate to the operational footprint, which I was talking about just now, and the energy to run that project or the waste materials, etc. And the material selection has a major influence on the total level of embodied carbon of a project, and should be considered in terms of carbon performance, in addition to the usual considerations such as fit for purpose, structural integrity, cost and availability. By using low impact materials, the carbon footprint of the construction process is massively reduced. And so therefore you can see that what you've got to be doing is thinking about absolutely everything within the process. It's not just the operational, it's what materials are being used, and it down to the different types of steel that's being used, or concrete that's being used. We work for clients around the world, and say building a building in Mogadishu, importing the concrete from different parts of the world or putting it together in Mogadishu, there's a less of an impact there. And you've got to be thinking about absolutely everything, the travel that it takes to bring those materials to you, and then making the materials up, and what is it that you need to do. And so therefore, once you start to understand absolutely everything around that project, you'll be able to reduce it. Which leads me nicely on to the reducing waste and energy. Globally, construction uses 3 billion metric tons of natural resources to manufacture building materials every year. Up to 30% of this is wasted with rework, overestimating, and inaccurate data, all contributing to the problem. And it's what I was referring to before with regard to, say, using an example like a marble company. What is that process that you've got to get to from quarrying that marble through to making a marble tabletop or kitchen top? What is it that you've got to do to go through that? Are you able to cut more standard sizes? Are you able to work with your contractors to make sure that it's still bespoke and niche, because that's what you're trying to get to, but you're also trying to reduce the amount of materials that are wasted. According to a report by Transparency Market Research, worldwide construction waste could nearly double to 2.2 billion tons by 2025. That's a pretty staggering figure. A new mindset to reduce waste in construction can be seen through autodesk.com, and they're doing some really interesting things over there. And how we manage projects leading to smart, ecologically sustainable management of construction materials and demolition of waste. It starts with this new mindset. This is essential as the sector accounts for as much as 50% of global energy usage. Factor in the maintenance of the buildings and other structures that figures go up to 50% of UK emissions. This is according to the Energy Management in Construction, pbctoday.co.uk. Outdated and inefficient energy management systems lead to wastage, which, as with any resource, is a costly and unnecessary drain on finances. Gone are the days when energy was viewed simply as a fixed cost of operations. Now, with spiraling energy prices, growing environmental concerns, and increasing legislation to curb energy wastage and reduce carbon emissions, it is better understood as a finite resource that can and should be managed like any other. So what is it that's we're able to do through Compare Your Footprints? And bearing in mind, yes, we are the only carbon footprint of this type at the moment. I will. It will only be a matter of time before others do it, and that is only a good thing, because it is not just one company, one person, one organization that is going to help alleviate and reduce climate change. It is going to be all of us working together to try and reduce that environmental impact. And so what we do is we will look at the site and what it is that you are using, be it through the logistics, the travel to and from sites, or what is it that you're procuring, the different types of steel, the different types of construction, and then what is it that you are disposing of the site. And every single one of these elements has different carbon factors. And those carbon factors are bespoke to that project, because if you were in, say, Mogadishu, then you will have a different carbon factor for concrete than if you're in central London, or if your materials are coming from France or elsewhere in Europe or around the world. And it's really, really important to make sure that you get that measuring correct. And this is where a company like, or organization like Compare Your Footprint comes into its own, because it's making it as easy as possible for you to be able to measure what it is that you're doing, and then be able to compare yourself against others within your industry. So we work with J Coffee. They have started using Compare Your Footprints across all of their sites around the UK. They have, they're usually subcontractors, but to the likes of Mace, they do run their own quite large projects as well. They're a medium to large size construction company. I'm sure they won't mind me saying that. But what they are is incredibly forward thinking and massively proactive and not reactive to what it is the client wants. They are pushing the boundaries and really trying to reduce the environmental impact within the construction industry and across their sites. And I'll just hand it over to Adrian just to talk about what it is that they are doing.
Consider for a moment doing something, though not seen, still had a major impact on local climate and subsequently contributed to reducing the world's carbon emissions to mitigate climate change. Then consider further that you were part of a plan that impacted on that change and was acknowledged by others in the construction industry who were influenced by your actions to do similar, and the legacy you might leave having been part of it. Working for J Coffey Construction, I'm in a fortunate position of influence where such a change can be implemented. Not on my own, I would add, but with the collaboration of Compare Your Footprint in conjunction with Green Element to develop a data collation platform that monitors and identifies the impact of what we do as an organisation to make that change. Because if you can't measure it, how do you know you're changing it? One of the most rewarding professions you might wish to consider is a career in sustainability, where you could make such an impact, make that change, and be part of the planet's recovery. Remember, ripples can make waves, so why not make a ripple?
I hope you agree. I couldn't have said it better. And Adrian is a tour de force in the construction industry and really trying to alleviate that environmental impact. So, have you got any questions? Thank you so much for listening to me today. I tried to keep it as brief and to time as possible, which I think I have. I actually don't have time in front of me, but yeah.
Absolutely spot on. Thank you so much, Will. That was amazing. And what an inspiring quote from Jay Coffey. That's, really us taking that back to our own personal ownership of how we achieve these change in the world.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And to be honest with you, what you guys are doing and with everything, I think we are all a part of that change, and we are all those ripples, and those ripples come a tidal wave in a positive way.
Tried to unmute with the space bar and it's not working. Sorry. Yes, definitely. And I know that you've talked a little bit about the amazing solutions and ways that you're addressing this. How did this come to be something that was so important to you? What was your journey into this?
I think it's funny, isn't it? I look back at my childhood and collecting litter with my gran on Wimbledon Common and on holidays, and then going on to do a degree and looking at what the effect people have on the environment whilst partaking in sports within the Cairngorm region. And interestingly, I'm now living in Scotland as well. So I think from a very early age and quite early on, I was trying to help organisations become sustainable and try to reduce the environmental impact of us as people, really. And so I think, yeah, I was just lucky enough to have the right influences around me when I was growing up.
You mentioned there about perhaps that the industry is maybe not doing as much as it could, as quickly as it could. What sort of response do you find when you work with organisations? I mean, presumably when you're looking to work with them, they already have an awareness of this, but is it a tick box or is it really something that they're looking to embrace?
I think I would say 20 years ago, it was probably more tick box. It was probably more of a, right, we're going to do this, and not even tick box, but legislation. We've got to do this. We have to get rid of the waste in the right places. Otherwise, our main contractor is going to get rid of us. And they're doing it to keep the work and to keep them happy. I would say that over time that's changed. And that's why organizations like J Coffey are starting to come out of the woodwork and really try and push the boundaries. And I think with them and a lot of I'd say that probably the younger people coming through, because they've been taught about it at school, they are in a privileged enough position to really understand the consequences of what their decisions can be, then that sea of change is starting to happen. And I think the organizations are starting to really want to do it. And that's only going to become more and more prolific.
Good. That's good to hear. And I think for a lot of the teachers and the students watching this, I know that climate has become something that is now included in the curriculum. But to know that this is actually the future of jobs and industry as well is something that it's not just a lovely hippie notion. It's actually something that you could do as a job, as a career. I know that you're based in Scotland, and COP26 this year will be in Glasgow. Is that something that you'll be involved with and supporting and exhibiting at?
I mean, we are only a small organisation, and if I'm honest, we are not particularly concentrating. I think there's going to be a lot of noise around COP26, and for me, it's just getting the job done and trying to reduce organisations' emissions. Saying that, we work with the Advertising Association and do all of their carbon reporting, and I know they're going to be presenting at COP26, and we're actually working with a few other organisations quite prolifically behind the scenes, and I can't mention any, but it will come to light at some point. So I'm quite happy to be sitting behind helping organisations, to be honest with you. I'll leave the shouting to lots of other people to do.